Mike and Teresa had spent years hiking together, forests, deserts, coasts. Nothing surprised them anymore, or so they thought. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. On what was supposed to be a casual hike through their local nature preserve, the couple found themselves standing in front of something so odd, so out of place, it made their skin crawl. In the middle of the dense, sun-dappled woods stood a tiny stone house. Not a cabin, not a shelter. A single-room stone structure, aged and crumbling, with ivy creeping up the sides like nature was trying to erase it. There were no signs on any maps, no trail markers leading to it, and when they searched online later, nothing came up. It was like the house had been forgotten by time or intentionally erased from it. At first it just felt strange, but when they looked inside, their confusion turned into fear. It all began on a sunny Saturday morning. Mike and Teresa were preparing for a longer than usual hike to the center of the preserve, an area they'd never fully explored. They were joined by Jonathan, a friend who wasn't exactly an outdoor type but insisted on coming along after hearing about their plan. The weather was perfect. Birds circled overhead. Everything felt normal, until it didn't. As they ventured deeper, Mike started to notice something off. The usual sounds of forest life, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, even the buzzing of bugs, were eerily absent. There was only silence and a faint, humid breeze that seemed to push them forward. Even the trails were wrong. Markings didn't match their maps, and satellite signal was patchy at best. Still, Jonathan pushed ahead, confidently taking the lead. That was the first sign that something wasn't right. Eventually, the forest opened up to a wide clearing. Light streamed in, and for a brief moment, everything felt calm. Then Mike spotted something low to the ground, what looked like a stone structure. Curious, he stepped forward to inspect it, only to trip on a hidden wire. Teresa helped him up, and that's when they both realized something deeply unsettling. Wires circled the entire clearing, some low to the ground, others chest height. It looked like a trap. Jonathan reappeared from the other side of the house, saying he'd found more wires leading into the tiny building. Then they heard it, a faint ticking sound coming from inside. Teresa, driven by curiosity, found a ground floor window and used her phone's flashlight to peek inside. What she saw made her gasp. Inside the house was a strange box. It looked electronic, wired into the walls with red lights blinking on its surface. Jonathan helped her pull it out through the window. Peter, the ranger, was calm but firm. He asked what they were doing so deep in that part of the preserve and why they had a restricted surveillance device in their hands. Mike and Teresa quickly explained how they had stumbled upon the strange house and the device. Peter listened intently, his eyes narrowing slightly when he heard Jonathan had taken the transmitter. He checked his handheld GPS tracker and confirmed Jonathan was already near the edge of the forest. There was no way to catch him now, not on foot, not with a dog. He invited Mike and Teresa back to his ranger outpost nearby to explain the situation. The couple, still shaken, followed without hesitation. At the cabin, Peter poured them both water and finally told them the truth. The tiny stone house wasn't just some forgotten relic. It was the last remaining structure from a long-abandoned amusement park that had once stood in the forest decades ago. After the park closed, the land had been repurposed as a protected nature preserve, and most of the old buildings had been demolished, except that house. Why it had been spared was a bit of a mystery, even to Peter, but in the past year, it had become the site of an unusual phenomenon. Peter claimed that a rare and endangered species of nocturnal bird had begun nesting nearby. It had only been spotted a few times, and he had set up the camera and transmitter as a low-interference monitoring system, something he wasn't technically authorized to do. That's why the system wasn't on any official record and why he'd been hesitant when first asked about it. The transmitter wasn't dangerous, he assured them, but it was important. Jonathan, however, had misunderstood its purpose. He'd apparently assumed the house and device were linked to some kind of government secret or hidden treasure. That's why he'd been so eager to join the hike. Teresa tried calling him again to explain, but he didn't answer. Later that evening, while Peter was preparing a small dinner for them, a voice called from the trees outside. Jonathan appeared, sheepish but unharmed. He looked disappointed, not because he'd gotten lost, but because the mystery had a much less exciting explanation than he'd imagined. When Peter asked where the device was, Jonathan hesitated for a moment before finally admitting he'd hidden it under a pile of rocks not far from the parking area. He returned it and apologized for causing so much trouble. Peter sighed, then chuckled. "People always want a big mystery," he said, "but sometimes the real story is about protecting what's still wild." The group agreed to keep the house's location and its purpose quiet. In return, Peter promised to report the entire incident as a misunderstanding. No citations, no trouble, just hikers who wandered off trail. Weeks later, Mike and Teresa saw a small article in the local newspaper. Ranger confirms sighting of endangered bird in remote preserve. Peter had officially made his discovery, and in the article, he gave subtle thanks to a few unexpected friends who helped him along the way. Mike and Teresa never forgot that hike, not just because of the stone house or the eerie silence in the woods, but because it reminded them that even the most experienced explorers can still stumble into something remarkable. Sometimes it's not about what you find, it's about how you handle it, who you trust, and whether you're willing to walk away from the unknown with just a story and your curiosity intact. And Jonathan? Well, he never joined them on a hike again, but he did start reading more about birds.